Good afternoon, friends. Here is Dr. Pramod Ambadasrao Pawar. I'm here to teach The Happy Prince by Oscar Wilde, the lesson which is prescribed by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University to the compulsory English students of BSc first year and BA first year. So this lesson is quite simple and which has also been studied through different points of view, through different perspectives. And it has also critically been analyzed by many critics. So before we proceed further, I would like to present a few quotable quotes which are very important in understanding the contextual meaning of the text. So there is one of the writers who says, Audrey Hepburn is the writer who says, the most important thing is to enjoy your life. So this enjoy your life. This enjoyment is the crux of the matter. Enjoyment is a crucial aspect of life. So first is to enjoy life. The most important thing is to enjoy your life, to be happy. It's all that matters by Audrey Hepburn. There is one more beautiful quotation by Dalai Lama who says, the purpose of our lives is to be happy. The purpose of our life is to be happy. There is one more quotation by the writer Charlotte Bronte, who has rightly said, happiness quite unshared can scarcely be called happiness. It has no taste. So what's important for being happy is to share your happiness to others. This is the only way to feel the ecstasy of life, to feel happiness within you. So there is the quotation by Oscar Wilde, who says, some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. So happiness is of two major sorts, according to Oscar Wilde. He has very intellectually remarked the exact meaning of happiness or how the happiness is being generated by the people. So there are many people that they are the root cause of unhappiness. There are many people in this world who are the root cause of happiness. So in their presence, we feel happy. And most of the times in their absence, we feel happy. So this is quite interesting to know a very different perspective about happiness by Oscar Wilde. I repeat, he says, some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. There's a last quotation by Mark Twain who says, sanity and happiness are an important combination. So there are two important combinations in life. One is sanity and second is happiness, according to Mark Twain. So Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince is an interesting essay. So let's go through this interpretation of the lesson entitled The Happy Prince. First of all, it's important to know the lifespan of Oscar Wilde, that is 1854 to 1900. This is the lifespan of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was an Anglo Irish playwright, and he is very well known to all of us, and he is known for his intelligence. So, here, Oscar Wilde was an Anglo Irish playwright. He is also a novelist, he is a poet, and a critic as well. He has been regarded as one of the greatest playwrights of the Victorian period. In his lifestyle or during his lifetime, he wrote nine plays, one novel, and numerous poems, stories, short stories, and essays. So, the name of the writer is Oscar Wilde here. He was born on 16th October 1854 at Westland Row, Dublin, Ireland, and died on 30th November 1900 in Paris, France. So his famous movies are Wild, Dorian Gray, An Ideal Husband, A Good Woman. So it's a beautiful story. The Happy Prince is a story by Oscar Wilde. The story is all about the story of a statue. It's a story of a statue, the Happy Prince, as we know the story of a statue. The statue is supposed to be a dead thing, but it is alive here in this context. And this is the most distinctive feature of this lesson, which is read very differently through different perspectives, understanding the deeper sense of happiness and unhappiness in life. So so here is a statue of the Happy Prince, which is covered with gold and many fine jewels. So this statue sits overlooking the city. The city is under observation. So what happens in this story is one day a sallow bird seeks shelter under the statue and discovers the fact that the prince is sad, the prince is not happy. So, how interesting it is. Let's see. So, in the course of time, what happens is that the bird becomes very friendly with the prince and tries to make him happy by assisting him in his desire to ease the suffering of others. See, there is very clear cut thing that one can understand in this context of this lesson is that if you stay home for a long time, you cannot understand the agonies, the suffering the people have outside. So, in this context, here the prince, when he was alive, he was not able to understand exactly the agony, the misery, unhappiness, suffering the people and the audience the people had to undergo. It plucks out the ruby, the sapphire, and other fine jewels from the statue and delivers them to those who are poor, who face financial problems, and who are needy. See how it is interesting. that a bird becomes friendly with the prince and tries to make him happy by assisting him in his desire to ace the sufferings of others. What exactly a bird does is that it plucks out the ruby, the sapphire, and other fine jewels from the statue and simply delivers them to those who are in need, to those who are really poor and face a number of financial problems in their life. So let's go through the text entitled The Happy Prince. So here is a very simple interpretation of the title, which is very suggestive, very meaningful, very connotative rather than denotative. In a sense, look at the three words. One is the article, definite article, the. Second is happy. And the third word is prince. Mostly, we come to realize the fact that princes are happy. The prince is happy because they have all the material things with them and they have not seen the real suffering of the people, the real life outside their mansion or the palace. So, the story of the happy prince deals with many issues. The thematic concern of the happy prince is quite ubiquitous if we enlarge the contextual meaning of the lesson entitled The Happy Prince. Here, in this context, Happy Prince demonstrates various themes. So, the themes relate to the social injustice, redemptive power of love, and the loss of innocence. Look at the words innocence, look at the word power, hegemony, and the social injustice. What exactly a society demands is social equity. So here, the bird manifests happiness. So whenever we look at a bird, we feel if I were a bird, I would be happy. Everyone wants to lead the life of a bird because it is said that a bird symbolically demonstrates happiness. A bird flies high in the sky, far away from the hustle and bustle in the society, far away from the noise, nuisance in the society. A bird has the power in its own wings to fetch happiness within and all around her. So these things are essential in the interpretation of happiness. So this happiness is quite symbolically manifested in this lesson. So in this story, we come across a statue, a real prince at one time. So it's the statue of the prince, a real prince once. When the prince was alive, he was extremely happy, no doubt. He was a happy person because he lives in the palace. And he didn't have any knowledge about human suffering. There is a ceaseless, incessant, continual chain of human sufferings which never ends. And in suffering, the happiness is seen nowhere. So here the prince was very happy in his palace because he didn't know anything about human suffering. His life was ecstatic, full of joys. He lived a very happy life. But once he died, after his death, the statue was built. His statue was built at the top of a tall column in the city. After his death, the statue was built in the city. See the difference. The statue was covered all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes, he had two bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. The statue was quite attractive. The statue was eye catching because it fetches the attention of the people all around it. Because the statue is covered with thin leaves of fine gold, beautifully. For eyes, it's an enigma. There are two bright sapphires and a large red ruby glowing on his sword hilt. How beautiful it is narrated by Oscar Wilde. There is a statue. The statue of the Happy Prince looked beautiful to everyone who beholds it. And everyone in the city used to love it. Everyone wants to see the prince, and they feel very happy looking at the statue of the prince. Because the statue was placed high above the city on a tall column. The prince was able to witness all the sorrows and sufferings which the common people faced in their daily life. The prince now is capable to understand the sufferings, the plight and predicament of the people, the sorrows of the people, how the common people suffer in their life. That's why C.E.M. Joad also talks about civilization. What is civilization? So the word is quite big, and there are many interpretations by the intellectual people in the world about civilization. Very simple definition was given by C.E.M. Joad about civilization. He simply says that if you want to know the civilization of a country or a nation, just understand how an ordinary person lives in the country. If an ordinary person faces no problem, there is no problem at all. That's crucial. There is second thought in this context is all about happiness. The happiness is all around us. The happiness is within us. When I was in a school, I was taught that how a dog wants to catch its own tail into the mouth. And finally, what a dog gets is a circle. But still, continuously, a dog wants to take its own tail into the mouth. So, here, happiness is nowhere, it is all around you. Happiness is nowhere, it's the state of your mind. Happiness is felt within, it's in the superconsciousness, it is in the absolutism, it is in sensing yourself deeper and deeper within. rather than without. So here, the statue of the Happy Prince looks beautiful to everyone who beholds it because it is placed high in the city, and the prince was able to witness all the sorrows and sufferings of the people all around it. There is a beautiful story. There is one of the poems I read that there is a gentleman who is having all the material powers and he is very happy. And he has a common touch. I used to behave well with everyone he meets. But one day he comes home, he shoots himself dead, takes a pistol, and he shoots himself dead. That's why Shakespeare has also rightly said that there is no art to find mice construction in the face. He was gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. Because the face unmasks the reality. The face mostly masks the reality. One cannot understand what exactly goes on in the mind by understanding simply what's on the mind. What's on the mind may be different from what's within and what's without. And really, it's interesting to know the difference between the within and without. So that's why it's important to know the people, how they suffer, what problems they have. And we can understand only the problems of the people only when we closely understand the people, just not from a long distance, from a remote distance. We try to solve the problems of the people. Sitting in the AC room, we try to find out the problems of the people. If you want to find out the problems of the people, you have to be with people. You have to have a common touch in order to resolve the problems of the people. You cannot understand the problems of the people staying in a very remote, desolate place. This is quite interesting and important in this lesson. So then only you can understand the problems of the people, how they suffer, what makes them suffer, what are the problems they usually face. So that's why the common touch is very important to understand the sufferings of the people. So, however, the prince remained ignorant of them during his lifetime. For the whole life, he is ignorant about the sufferings of the people. This made the prince, once happy, very sad. So, here, whenever the prince comes across the problems of the people, quite naturally, therefore, the tears roll down his cheeks and he starts crying. There is one example, another example I would like to give you in this context is all about Lord Gautam Buddha, the swan and the Gautam Buddha story, the prince. So there is a very sharp arrow that made the bird suffer. It's bleeding and it falls down on the ground. And Lord Gautam Buddha very tenderly, carefully, lovingly, affectionately holds the bird in his hand and he removed very slowly the barb of the arrow, that sharp arrow. The bird is fluttering, it's making sound, it's crying. Blood was coming out. So, in this context, what's important is that Gautam Buddha put that arrow into his wrist in order to understand how the bird suffers. So, in order to know the suffering of the people, he troubled himself. In order to know how the bird suffers, he troubled himself. And in this fashion, he understood how a bird suffers. So it's quite interesting because every time, or very scarcely, very hardly, we understand the suffering of the people all around us. So here, the prince, when he was alive, he didn't understand the meaning of unhappiness because he was absolutely happy in his palace. So when the life turned into a statue, then he realized how the people suffered, and naturally his eyes got watered and large drops of tears began to run down his golden cheeks. A little shallow who had alighted between the feet of the happy prince to spend the night there. There is a shallow, there is the appearance of a little shallow in this story, and that is at the feet of the happy prince. And curious to know where did the drops of water fall down. So it is falling down, it's coming down. Who is crying? Maybe it's the rainwater, or what it is exactly. Actually, these are the drops of water coming out of the eyes of the prince, eyes of the statue. He looked up and saw the eyes of the happy prince full of tears. The prince was crying. The bird took pity on the prince and became ready to assist him in his desire to ease the sufferings of the common people. So the bird, in this context, pities on the prince. He feels sympathy towards the prince. And the bird wanted to help the prince to know the sufferings of the people, common people, and how to sort it out. So the lesson is not talking only about the problems of the people that they suffer. The lesson talks about the solution of the problem. The lesson gives you the solution of the problem. So here, the prince became the messenger of the prince and agreed to remove the fine gold and jewels from his statue to distribute them among the poor and the needy. What exactly the prince did is that he agreed to remove the fine gold and jewels from his statue, and he wanted those valuable things, material things, to be distributed among the poor, to the needy people, to the people who financially suffer. He started with plucking this ruby from the prince's sword and giving it to the seamstress who had no money to feed her ailing child. There is a ailing child. And to the seamstress, money is given, the ruby is given, knowing the problem. Then he plucked a sapphire from one of the eyes of the statue and gave it to the playwright, who was very poor, to make fire in the winter to continue his writings. So while writing, he had the problem of making fire in the winter. So he's a writer, he's a playwright, and to help the playwright, a sapphire from one of the eyes of the statue was given to him. He was very hungry and feeling weak. So that's why assistance is given to those who are in need of it. So one day the prince saw a match girl in the course of time. What the story tells us, there is a match girl, and the father beats the girl because all the matches fail in the gutter. And quite naturally, therefore, the father got angry and the girl was being beaten by the father. The prince's heart filled with pity for the girl. He immediately commanded the shallow to pluck out his other eye and help the girl. So, one already eye was lost for the playwright who is in need of the making of fire in winter to continue his writing. And one more situation is that when one eye is lost, the prince, the statue, is ready to devote one more eye to the girl who is beaten by her father. See, one thing is that you have eyes, that's why you can see the world. You can appreciate the dazzling beauty of the nature. Suppose what happens, this you don't have eyes, you are absolutely blind, sightless. You cannot see the nature all around you. You can see, you can view, behold the nature within. So, in this context, what is important is there is much more importance of your eyes. Just imagine that you don't have eyes and how the world will be looking at you. Because you can't look at the world will look at you. So in this context, but still the statue is ready to let one more eye to the girl. The prince's heart filled with pity for the girl. He immediately commanded the sailor to pluck out his other eye and help the girl, assist the girl. But the sailor was not ready to do that because this would make the prince completely blind. He plucked out the prince's other eye because the prince insisted on this to take his eyes and give it to the needy one. So, on being insisted, he plucked out the prince's other eye and swooped past the match girl and slipped the jewel into the palm of her hand. The little bird decided not to leave the company of the happy prince who had gone blind now. What happens with the people who are blind? They are always assisted by others, those who are having eyes. So, this is very important. So, here the little bird decided not to leave the company of the happy prince. The little bird wanted to accompany the prince forever because he is totally blind. Although the prince was not able to see the sorrows and sufferings anymore, he knew it, he knew it was there. Quite naturally, therefore, he instructed the bird to take off the fine gold he was covered with and give it to the poor. So, The prince instructed the bird, to take off the fine gold he was covered with and give it to the poor. The bird follows his words and picked off leaf after leaf of the gold, till the happy prince looked quite dull and grey. In the beginning, the statue looked very attractive, very eye catching, dazzling. It catches the attention, it arrests the attention of the beholders and viewers all around it in the city. But right now, it looks very dull and grey because all the golden things have been removed. The snow came and the poor little sallow grew older and colder. However, he did not leave the prince. Finally, he grew weak and died from exposure and exhaustion. There is a curious crack sounded inside the statue in the course of time, as if something had broken. So, as the days pass, there is a crack in the statue. In fact, it was the leaden heart that has snapped right in two at the loss of the sweet and kind swallow. The statue was no more beautiful and useful now because it is isolated, deserted. Therefore, the town councillors and the mayor pulled it down. They demolished it and they melted the statue in a furnace. However, the broken heart did not melt. The heart did not melt. Therefore, what they did is that they threw the heart, the broken heart, on a dust heap where the dead sallow was lying. So, the broken heart of the statue and there is the dead sallow, both are lying together. How the life gets diminished in the course of time and how long you can survive in life. So there is a interesting note, a ubiquitous note that one can feel while going through the text, that the life is transitory. When God asked one of his angels to bring the two most precious things in the city, because God wanted to have two most precious things in the city. The angel brought him the two most precious things. One is the leaden heart of the prince, the statue, and the second is the dead bird. And God really appreciated both of it. He welcomed the two in his garden of paradise and he considered the beautiful creation of his own. So, really, he appreciated his own creation because the two things, the leaden heart and the dead bird, was very precious to God. So, in this way, there is the central idea, and the interpretation of the lesson is finished. The lesson is Oha. I hope you should work very hard from different perspectives and interpret it critically and comment on this. Thank you very much for your patient listening to me. And please subscribe my videos. Thank you very much.